one that can see.
Where there's thunder, there's lightning. John Nada. Today we're going to be talking about Oneitis. We don't often define terms here on the Days of Thunder, but I feel it apropos to define Oneitis for anybody that's not familiar with it. It's an obsessive, worrying, insecure emotion a guy feels towards a particular woman. He believes the girl in his life is perfect for him, which results in being emotionally invested and having a heavy attachment, and more or less causing a lot of anxiety and later depression usually. I say all that to say this. I figured I'd tell you a story from one of my experiences a while back in college. I had just gotten out of a relationship with a girl named Amy and ended up in a relationship with this girl named Becca. Now, me and Becca had been friends previously, and she was attractive, and she found me to be attractive, and we had a lot of similar interests, and she was kind of one of those girls that was kind of one of the guys, but in a good way. And not only that, but like I said, she was all right looking. Well, a lot of this buildup had been going on for about a month or so. And, she made it kind of known she liked me when I was in the relationship with the other girl. Well, when that ended, we, started talking, and the majority of that took place over the holiday break. But it was weird. Once we got back from holiday break and we started spending time together and all this, she started to distance herself, and she became, her interest waxed and waned. And we eventually broke up, and then we ended up getting back together, and we talked about getting engaged and married and all this. And, for two 19 or 20-year-old kids at Bible college, this was kind of par for the course. So fast forward to the summer, and I take her up to her house in Indiana and spend a few days. And then when I leave, everything seems great. Everything seems like it's going in the direction I want it to. But a few weeks or so later, it just seemed like all of a sudden her interest wasn't there anymore. And I really began to question, the relationship and everything. And by this time, I was pretty heavily emotionally invested in this girl. I mean, we talked about getting married, engaged, and all this stuff. So by this time, I had a pretty bad case of Oneitis. Well, the summer went on, and for about a month, there just wasn't any clear-cut answers, And at that time, I was dealing with my grandmother getting sick with leukemia, and she subsequently passed away not long after falling ill. On top of, trying to figure everything out with this girl. And needless to say, it caused me a lot of anxiety. I mean, to the point where it was difficult to eat at times. And by far, this was probably one of the lowest points, if not the lowest points of my life. I mean, I don't think I've ever felt this low since then. And I guess the thing of it is, it's one thing to break up with somebody and to end a relationship, because when you do that, it's over. There's some finality to it, and the person can move on and go on about life. But keeping them in this kind of limbo state, or this limbo situation, is really a cause for just having a lot of, anxiety and everything else. So it comes down to a point in time where I decide, we need to see each other, and I'm going to make the drive to Indiana, which was a 7-hour drive. And I drive up there, and get up there and everything seems okay at first. And I end up staying in her grandpa's Jayco RV. And I just remember just being hot as, the blazes of hell in there. But it just still, we're spending time together. All this stuff's kind of going on. And, but it still seems like things aren't quite like they should be. And we eventually end up having this kind of, I spent a little time with her friends. One was her best friend, and then her boyfriend. And I just felt like the third wheel, or the fourth wheel, I guess, because she seemed more interested in pleasing them and hanging out with them than she really did taking any kind of ownership or association with me, so to speak. So then there's this kind of big get together with a few more of her friends, and I just really, like I said, I just really felt like I didn't belong. I felt low. So at some point during the get together, I kind of walked to the back of the place we were hanging out at and start talking to a buddy of mine. because I just really felt ignored and like, it wasn't important that I was there at all. Well, to make a long story short, I spent a few days there, and finally, it was like the day before I was going to leave, or maybe a day or two before I was going to leave. I just kind of confront her on all this stuff, and all this kind of stuff comes out, and it comes out she's not really interested anymore, and all this. And as you can imagine, that was an emotional situation for me. So I just ended up going and getting in my car and driving home. I mean, at that point, I hadn't felt welcome the entire time, and it just didn't really make any sense to continue to stay there. I drive home, and this is a 7-hour drive. I finally make it there, and nobody's at the house. Everybody's gone, and I just kind of call up there and just to let her know that I'd made it home safe, and she couldn't have cared less. It was just kind of like, okay, whatever. And then somehow or another, I ended up talking to her sister, and her sister was really like empathetic about it, and was trying to like, calm me down a little bit and everything else. That, like I said, that moment right there on the phone, like it was just probably one of the lowest in my life, and nobody was there. And I mean, it was just really a difficult moment. But as time went on, I spent time around family, talked to my mom a little bit, and just tried to go on. And 3 or 4 days go by, and everything seems to be getting better. And then out of the blue, I'm spending some time with some friends. I get home the next day, or that morning or whatever, and my mom tells me that Becca's called, and she sounded upset and all this stuff. So I ended up calling her back, and it seemed like we'd patched things up, and so things went on a little while longer, and seemed like they were maybe getting a little better, and then they seemed kind of like they were all going to hell again. School finally starts back up, and it's not more than a month later we're broke up again. And that's really when all the bad stuff started, because I had to see her every day. We continued to try to, it was more on my part to try to keep this person in my life, but I was pretty sure, she didn't have a car, and I was pretty sure she kind of was using me for rides and, basically anything else that was convenient. Well, anyway, she eventually doesn't come back to school, and after like a long, arduous, she kept kind of stringing me along that we would get back together and all this, and finally it just became apparent that that wasn't going to happen, and it was just one of these things where, I had to finally put my foot down, and I had to finally grow a pair, and I just cut her off. I didn't call her anymore, I didn't text her, I didn't have anything to do with her. And as time went on, little by little, I healed and got over it, and it just seemed like it was all nothing. It just seemed like a dream. About 2 years later, somehow, I guess through the magic of Facebook, me and Becca end up talking again. And this time the roles are reversed. This time she's really into me. And so we date for a while, but to be quite honest, by this point she'd hit the wall. She'd gained some weight. She, hit the wall in some other areas of, complexion and whatnot. And she just wasn't anywhere near as attractive as she was before. And it was kind of funny, because it was one of these situations where if it didn't work out, it didn't work out. I didn't really care. I had gotten over it. I had moved on. And so I knew what it was like to be without this person, and life went on. I ended up actually cheating on her with an Air Force chick, and this Air Force chick was pretty good looking, and I felt no remorse whatsoever, having given the history and what she had put me through previously, and the fact that she had no remorse or care and concern. She never knew about that till long after we broke up. But suffice it to say, she's married now, and the guy that's married to her, I kind of feel bad for him, because she had hit the wall when we started talking again, but she really gained. She's a land well now. And I say all that to say this, I could go into a lot of detail about it, but throughout my life, and I'm sure throughout the lives of many young men, they have had this feeling of oneitis. And the point is that it always goes away. It always gets put into perspective. You always move on. And at this point in my life, it's become very difficult to even remotely have feelings like that again for anybody. I can't tell you the last time that I've had any oneitis that, lasted beyond a day or something, if that. I mean, it's very difficult to have any kind of feelings like that now, and a lot of that's through time and experience and age and all that. But the point is any feeling you can have for anybody is not a valuable feeling. It's clearly an illusion. It's clearly not based in reality. Because, as I'm sure can be attested to by many others, if you can have that same feeling for 10 other girls, then, like I said, it must not be of much value. And I think a lot of it, too, reminds me of the scene in Conan, The Wheel of Pain, where he starts out this scrawny, young child pushing the wheel, and by, the end of the scene, he's this hulking, massive man. And that's kind of what life experience does for us. We push this wheel, and little by little we become stronger and stronger until we're able to deal with more and more and more and cope with more and more and more. And it's just like another scene in Conan where he's a gladiator, and I always remember that line where the Chronicle says he began to see his own self-worth. He mattered, and that's kind of almost a tagline for MGTOW. That we go through these experiences, and these are things that I don't think can otherwise be taught other than by the teacher, which is experience. And then once we go through these things, they don't destroy us. They don't stop us. They don't. That's one of the things that you have to watch out for, is getting caught up in the past and getting caught up in one moment of history. It's important to press on and press forward and keep pushing the wheel until you break free. And so, like I said, everybody, I think, at some point in time has had oneitis, has dealt with oneitis, and we all have our different ways of dealing with things in life. But the point is you got over it and you moved on. And many of us have done it more than one time. So, it's something that once you take the red pill and once you decide to go MGTOW, it's something that I don't think you deal with quite as often as maybe somebody else that's still buying into the delusion and that's still plugged in. But I realize, there's a lot of people that come to these videos, these MGTOW videos, not necessarily mine per se, but perhaps mine and other videos, and they're in the beginning stages of things. And I think they need to hear it from those of us here in the community, but just other men in general, that, life does go on, and that which does not kill you makes you stronger. And it's important to let them know that there is life beyond the blue pill. There is life beyond the matrix. And to show people what that life could be. And so that's pretty much all I got for this video. I'll try to do more. I'd like to do some more terminology videos, especially for those getting into the basics of MGTOW who may not necessarily, they've heard of hypergamy, they've heard of gynocentrism, they've heard of Rifos law, but they don't necessarily know what those things are. And there's a lot of content videos out there that are about those things, but I kind of feel impressed upon myself to do just, at least the basic explanation of some of those things. Well, that's all the time I got today on the Days of Thunder. Thanks for joining me. You're free to do as you're told. Be your own disciple.